Beware, I've clicked the streaming button, so anything you now say, as of this second, right now.
Hello, world.
God damn it. Okay, I'll talk to you after then.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to talk, have some ideas, we chat later. What's that? Oh, nice. Well done. Okay. It's like 7, so let's do a meeting. Hopefully, if somebody's on the internet, aren't they? I can see. That's great. Thank you, on the internet person, for saying they can see the stream. Lovely. Okay. Tonight, here's news. There's the link. It's also in Slack, and we tweeted it for once. Our agenda is news. Then we're going to talk about CTF contest a little bit. So we got to find out who wants to help. Then I want to talk about the lab a little bit because I have some ideas. So if anybody is feeling ambitious, they can help with that. And then for a while, people wanted to talk about sweaters. I don't know if we're still going to have that chat because normally Clinton's involved in that, but he decided to take the night off because he's a great big huge slacker. If he's listening online. I don't know if anybody else is authorized to speak about sweaters on Clinton's behalf. And then we're going to finish it up with freestyle rap battles, if anybody wants to. I'm going to leave for that part, but if y'all want to do that, go right ahead. So we're going to hop into the news. I've been here, by the way, since 6 in the morning, so I'm like real tired. So just fair warning. Okay, we're going to start off with the mega breach, or the so-called mega breach, which was allegedly in the hundreds of millions of passwords as part of some giant data set that got released. And there were lots of articles about it, like lots and lots and lots of articles talking about the mega breach. Now, going back though, according to folks like Troy Hunt, who runs Have I Been Pwned, and Krebs, apparently this is not like a whole bunch of super recent breach data. Apparently people have just taken a bunch of smaller breaches that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years and concatenated it into a gigantic data set. Now, that's still news because oftentimes people would have to like sift through all kind of sketchy places and look for torrents to find all this stuff and manage it and collate it and put it together themselves. So the fact that this has been put together in one accessible data set that you can find via a single torrent download is somewhat concerning, right? Kind of big, like 87 gig. And it says collection number 1. Can we infer something from that?
That was the comments I had to, like,
yeah.
If that's labeled as number 1, there's probably lots of others.
Yeah, is this like collection 1 of 73? Because if so, then we should be concerned. Interesting though. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's apparently from the group that released it. Collection 1, collection 2, 3, 4. I like how they go from like 87 to 526 gig to make us think that collection 2 is the business. And oftentimes what they will try to do to make the monies is to like offer early access to collection 2 or say collection 1's for free, but you gotta pay for number 2. I don't know that because I didn't actually go to the site and check it out, but oftentimes they do stuff like that. So interesting that that's out there. It will probably have ramifications on, I don't know, everybody. Be interesting to know if anybody recently got like a new "You've Been Pwned" email from Troy. If you've signed up for the "Have I Been Pwned" service, I didn't get anything new, and I have all my email addresses signed up. So if any of my accounts get popped, I get the email. But I haven't seen one yet. So either I'm lucky, or these really are a bunch of old data. So interesting either way. So there's 1 article, 2, and 3, and 4. So this is like a series of articles. So this happened earlier in the month, but some folks found out that a bunch of the telcos in the US were selling location data of their users. And a couple of things. 1, people thought that they weren't doing this. I think they have a reasonable expectation to think that they're not doing this, but this elevated or went like up the chain pretty quickly, and eventually they had some senators talking about it, because that's kind of concerning, right? Like your telecom company selling someone details about where you've been and when you've been there and stuff. That's a little bit concerning for privacy reasons, like lots of good privacy reasons. Then a bunch of carriers said, well, we're going to stop doing that. And then we wonder if we believe them or not. And again, like all these carriers are like, no, but they've done it in the past, so I don't know, can we believe them? Yeah. because marketing people will pay them a lot of money for it. So that's not great. It would be interesting to know if anything like that is going on in this country, or if we have legislation against that. I don't know if we do or not. I mean, I guess direction from PIPEDA would suggest that if they are doing that, they would have informed you, and they have to have good reason for having collected that data, and if you want to, you can request that they get rid of it. So, I don't know. Interesting. Let's see. This was neat. In terms of people's rights, again, this is US-centric, not Canadian, but eventually some sort of ruling similar to this will probably trickle down to us, or trickle up because we're above them. Kind of, I guess. If you were like in space and looking the other way, I guess we could be whatever. But anyways, a judge said that essentially you can't force someone to use their biometrics to unlock their smartphone to do a search on it, which is interesting because I believe the inverse is true for passwords, right? They can charge you if you won't give up your password. I think that's where that ruling ended up going.
It seems to be dependent case to case because there's an article on Mac, or whatever it is, that's saying specifically the opposite, that you can be forced to give your you can't be forced to give your password.
Yeah, so I'm sure it depends on what law it is you're actually like being charged with violating and what the circumstances are. But I thought I heard at one point they could charge you if you didn't give up your password. Now maybe that's if they have a bunch of other, evidence that's pretty good. I don't know. But the idea that you can't be forced to unlock with your biometrics is nice. I don't know how you keep someone from doing that though. Like if they really want to unlock your phone, like they could just be walking past the suspect with their phone and go oops, and then trip and point it at the suspect, and then the phone unlocks. Or here, we'll give you your phone back, and you touch the back where the fingerprint thing is, and they go, actually, wait a minute, we need that. I don't know. Or they just do it when you're asleep. I don't know.
Actually, I've read in a Forbes article that this issue here has to deal with the magistrate's judge decision, which could be overturned by a district court judge. So
interesting. Yeah. I'm guessing it could go all the way up to some quite high levels of court decision. Yeah, interesting though, because that's going to be a thing. I mean, since we all tend to keep a lot of data on our phone now. Again, cops told no, you can't have a warrant to force a bunch of people to unlock their phones by fingerprint and face scan and stuff like that. So interesting. Fortnite had some problems with sign-in. Generally around how they implemented single sign-on that would then leverage your auth credentials for a bunch of different services, or that were embedded in a bunch of different services like Facebook and stuff like that. It boils down to I kind of skimmed this, but I'm pretty sure it was some sort of cross-site request forgery. So I send you a link with a bunch of parameters embedded in it, and you click on it, and it essentially gives me access to your account that way because of the form and style of link I've sent you. But that's what it boils down to. One attacker could get access to someone else's account through a specially crafted link that would kind of force you over to the login page and stuff like that. So, not great because apparently a lot of people play that game. There's one. Interesting. Ancient UT 2004 server. Okay. Fort made wired too. Neat. So other stuff. MageCart is back. So that very prevalent credit card stealing piece of malware that would get injected through ad networks and stuff like that. This was the one that was responsible for the British Airways, this one right here, the British Airways, the Newegg, and a whole bunch of them towards the end of last year, where this piece of malware would essentially get embedded in the credit card payment system and the front-end site, and users would give up their credit card data, and this thing would sort of intercept it and steal the data, go buy stuff. Over the holidays, I guess, they managed to embed this thing in a French ad network, so then it was being served up on a bunch of French web pages because the ad network is essentially just pushing out the ads, and the ad would have MageCart embedded in it. So pretty interesting kind of like reverse spin on the watering hole attack, where we throw it in an ad network and it gets pushed out to everybody. Kind of neat. Also bad because fraud, but still kind of neat. More on that. I'm trying to find lots of links these days for the articles. I don't know what was going down. Oh, I have no idea what's happened to this page. Let's just do this. Cool. You're probably all aware that there is a partial government shutdown going on in the United States right now. This article is from the 11th, so that's why that date is wrong, but whatever. There is a security a security problem, whatever, because of that, and it's that a bunch of HTTPS certs are set to expire during the partial shutdown, meaning there isn't like an IT person there to renew the digital cert. So unless the certificate authority is willing to like hold on to the cert for the government, somebody else in theory could go and buy the cert for that U.S. government service, and then start like man-in-the-middling people or doing a bunch of fake stuff. So that's interesting. Weird coincidence. I mean, there's a simple solution to this. Does anybody know what the fix to this is?
Build a wall?
Nope. Nope. Nope.
Yeah, automate the service, right?
Yeah, automate it with Let's Encrypt. Yay, because it's free and it's awesome. So they could just do that. Now, I've heard though that they have so many nodes that they run up against the throttling limit for Let's Encrypt or something like that. I thought I saw somebody tweeting about that, but I'm sure part of it could be automated. Anyways, interesting. CES just happened, the Consumer Electronics Show, where all sorts of weird and wacky electronic gadgets get displayed for the first time, and people talk about it, and it's neat. For us, the important part is this year, like every other year, I don't know why this was a surprise, neat stuff is popular, boring old security is not. I'm not shocked by this announcement whatsoever, but I mean, sure, we should be conscious of the fact that IoT products are being churned out like crazy, and they probably are still lacking in security controls or maybe forethought of security considerations. So yeah, that'd be neat. It'd be fun to walk around CES sometime, and from a security perspective, and assess what a bunch of the new technologies are offering in terms of that. It'd be kind of cool. I'd like to go to this thing sometime. There is cool stuff, right, that gets shown off at CES. They updated the Marriott data breach. It's no longer 500 million records, it's only 383. So, sweet. But they also mentioned there's a whole bunch of unencrypted passport numbers in the breach. So, I mean, that's not great. There's probably going to be a lot of identity theft and stuff because of that. Oh yeah, a bunch of payment card details and stuff as well. So, although they were encrypted, we don't know how well yet. Interesting. Just an update on that one because that was a big one towards the end of last year. Yeah.
When the breach happens, when you hire an investigation company to investigate the breach for you, typically if they can't figure out for sure, they usually go with the worst case scenario for numbers.
Yes, they do. Yeah. If they don't know and you've been breached, you just kind of look at how big's our database. 500 million? Okay, well, we'll use that.
So that's why typically people pay a lot for a big forensic company to make sure that it never did happen, so they can lower the number.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, these things rarely go up in terms of number of records breached. Sometimes they do, though. I think the Yahoo one is one of the ones that kept going up. But yeah, this one and most other ones kind of get reduced as they learn more about the incident that happened. So, interesting. Marriott, again. Oh, this was neat. So someone discovered a new tactic that's being used in phishing with some custom web fonts. What happened was that someone kind of invented a character that's basically a space character with 0 width. So what would happen is, they don't have a picture of it in this version of the article, but I'll show you. So what would happen is you would have a URL like www.somebank.com, right? And this is what the URL would normally look like, but what bad guy had actually done would have been to register a company with this as their domain name. But they were using a custom font so that this had no width. So you didn't see it on the screen. So the URL looked like that if you looked at it. Kind of cool. I've seen similar attacks where they do the other thing. They space this out so far that they hope it gets pushed off the edge of your browser's URL bar, and so you're only seeing this part. So what you might see is, some bank.com, and then like way over here, and then like a whole bunch of other stuff, and then way over here, actuallybadguysite.com, like that. But you don't see this part because this is way off the screen. That's another thing they do. But this notion of like the zero width or screwing with the width of characters and spacing and stuff like that in the font is really cool. Bad because they're bad guys, but still cool. This was amazing. Bunch of researchers, I forget where they were, was it University of Maryland. So I assume most of you have clicked the I'm not a robot button, but then Google gives you this pop-up and it says click all the things that are storefronts or fire hydrants or cars or whatever, and then you spend like 10 minutes looking at that last picture going, like, I can't tell if that's like a shack or a storefront, and you click it hoping that you won't be forever flagged as a robot. However, to make this accessible, and that's nice that Google designs accessible technologies, there's a way to opt out of this and to hear an audio version of a CAPTCHA, right? And it will say like, type the thing you just heard, right? And we do this for people that might be, visually impaired and stuff like that. So what the researchers did, which is brilliant, they had the sound play back and they recorded it into the machine, and then they took the sound clip and they fed it to Google's own search to text algorithm, took the resultant text and pasted it back in the box, and it worked like perfect. Like their success ratio was like through the roof. 90%. Yeah, 85.15 or 90%. That's amazing. Like it's neat that they found this, but it's hilarious that to bypass the Google service, they used a whole different Google service. Like, genius, absolute genius. Don't know what they're going to do about that, because obviously they still need to provide an accessible means for people to engage in, like, I'm not a bot CAPTCHA things, but they're going to have to do something. Maybe they can embed, like, some kind of, like an audio watermark that a person wouldn't hear, but that their text-to-speech or whatever will pick up on, right? Because it could obviously detect and deal with frequencies and stuff we couldn't hear. Maybe that's the solution, but a neat problem nonetheless. So good, I had it in there twice. Zerodium has upped the amount they're willing to pay for an iOS remote jailbreak, as in, I give you link, you go to website, and now your phone's jailbroken. They've upped it to $2 million. That's a lot of money for an iOS jailbreak. And $1 million for remote code exec on all the messaging services. And a lot less for Chrome remote code. So that's a lot of money for that kind of stuff. I don't know what else to say. I think if John were here, he'd have something to say about Zerodium, but he's not here.
They don't actually, do they sell those 0 days back to like the vendor, or do they just like sell to some mysterious?
They might engage in like selling it to shady governments and stuff like that.
Whoever pays them.
I won't speculate. I must have clicked stuff twice. Hold on. Neat news from Yubico and Apple. Apparently now there's going to be a way to use your YubiKey via obviously some kind of adapter to authenticate to your iOS device, so your iPad, your iPhone, whatever. Cool idea. So you just touch the little thing there, and it feeds it a great big long key, and you get to log in. Neat. That's great. Also, it will apparently have LastPass support as well, so you can plug your YubiKey into your phone and then access your LastPass account to get access to all your passwords. Cool. You also don't necessarily need to plug it in, right? I completely forgot about this because the new YubiKeys also have, what is it, like RFID or whatever it is, NFC that you put near the phone and it gets picked up by the wireless reader in the phone. So all you got to do is hold your YubiKey up to your phone, and that will unlock it. So cool, neat. Awesome, good feature. Apple's been doing some nice stuff recently in terms of like security, so good for them. Oh, hey look, Apple doing more cool stuff. Tim Cook got up in front of, I think, some board, body, something like that, and said, hey, we need to do better at data privacy. We need some real strong, hard-hitting data privacy legislation. That's nice to see from the leader of Apple, because they probably have access to a lot of people's data and stuff, so good, awesome. Strong privacy legislation is the thing they need in the US. And hopefully that will convince Canada to up some of ours. Our guidelines and stuff like PIPEDA and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, they're good things, but in my opinion, they don't have sufficient enforcement powers or teeth. So if the US puts in strong privacy legislation the way that the EU has, maybe we will also get a taste of that up here, which again would be lovely, because privacy is a good thing. This is neat. So if you're at all involved in any kind of malware analysis, you know one of the things that is tricky about a lot of modern malware is it wants to know when it's in a virtual machine. Because if the malware can figure out if it's running inside a virtual machine, it knows it's probably being examined by a malware analyst. When it knows it's in a virtual machine, it'll just do stuff like shut down or not do anything malicious. If it knows it's not, then it'll go ahead and do the malicious thing. And they've come up with all kinds of neat ways of determining if they're in a VM. This was a neat one, though, for Android malware. So it uses the phone's like accelerometer, because your Android phone and your iPhone and stuff have an accelerometer in it that will tell you if it's moving. Right? So it uses that. So if it's getting data from the accelerometer, then obviously it's in a physical device that's moving. So if that's the case, it's very likely not a virtual machine. And if that's the case, then it will trigger its payload and do the malicious thing. Neat. I don't know, that's pretty cool. Could you spoof that? Yeah, you probably could. If you can somehow intercept the malware's querying of the accelerometer data, you could probably spoof it via the virtual machine and tell it, yeah, this phone's totally moving. But it's pretty cool in terms of ways of detecting if you're in a VM or not. Very novel. I mean, you could probably extend that to any kind of sensor that's in the phone. Like your phones have thermometers in them, right? They have barometric pressure sensors. They have, what's the thing that tells me which direction I'm facing? Like a gyroscope or something like that. They have those in them too. So really, you could extend this technique to any one of those types of things that's built in your phone and build on this concept. Neat. Very neat idea. Oh, there was an issue with Twitter. So you can have your account set to private, right, in Twitter. So only people you kind of mutually follow or whatever can see your stuff. Apparently a while back there was a bit of a glitch where they like unset that for a bunch of people by accident and didn't tell them. So a bunch of people's private accounts were like not private for a while. So that's not great. We see these numbers from time to time. So someone will do a new survey and they'll come out and say, you know, every data breach costs you $1 million per lost user record, or a data breach costs you $10 per user record. This one, the company is listed down here somewhere. Here. Radware's Global Application and Network Security Report. They're claiming, so they talk to a bunch of CSOs and they say IT executives. And this was the average value they came out with in terms of how much a cyber attack costs a company. Is there a link to the actual survey data?
Somehow that seems low.
If they're talking average though, and they've talked to companies of lots of different sizes, right? Some companies will pull that average way, way down. Here's the mean though in millions for different sectors. So apparently it doesn't cost education much to get breached. Do we just not care and we don't investigate it? I don't know. Versus big cost to retail. Any idea why you think there might be a big cost to retail when there's a data breach? Compared to like high tech or government or something like that. What does retail have that would be costly to deal with after the fact? Anybody know? Yeah, probably card data is going to be related to it in some way. So there might be fines that they have to pay, like lots of credit monitoring that they have to supply for end users. It could even mean that maybe part of this cost is because if they've got poor endpoint control, as in all their cash registers and self-check terminals and stuff are vulnerable, they got to go update a whole bunch of in-the-field hardware, right? It could be that as well. Versus something like, you know, a high-tech firm, they probably just have like a website that they got to update or something like that. So, interesting. I don't know. It's just a good idea to kind of keep these numbers in mind, or sort of keep up to date with these types of stats and metrics when they get released, because at some point you're going to have to talk about this at some kind of meeting to justify your security budget. So if you can tell people, well, you know, we're probably going to get attacked 5 times this year, and it costs 1.7 million, so we should spend $50 on whatever LastPass licenses for our users and stuff like that. So it's good there for justification. Oh yeah, so somebody released a proof of concept phishing platform that tried to automate bypassing two-factor authentication. It's not as bad as the author makes it sound, though. What happens is you take this tool, Mantis?
Yeah, it's just the word Mantis, and I forget which language.
Oh, neat. And basically, it'll do a nice version at cloning a website, but it will also clone like the second part of it where it asks for your two-factor authentication code. So provided the user does the login process fast enough and feeds the two-factor auth code into this malicious platform, it will then forward it onto the real site and log in as you. So it's basically like advancing phishing to the stage where it's also trying to intercept your two-factor code that you type in. That's all. Kind of cool. I assume it's posted somewhere. So you can go and pull it down, I'm sure, and look at how it does that. Neat. Just because we like to pick on WordPress. Apparently WordPress vulnerabilities were up 30% in 2018. Okay, that's good to know. Usually plugin related, but yeah, that's all. Just they were up. So patch your WordPress blog if you have a WordPress blog. Do we still have a WordPress blog for Sessions? Is it still running? We should patch that. Is anybody in charge of that? No, I don't think. Who did we like elect to the webmaster position? I don't even know. Like, who is our webman? You don't have to say who you are if you don't want to know. No, that's fine. We might have to re-elect that position. I don't even know what it is. Someone just needs to go in and click update. That's how you update WordPress. There's a button. You just click it. Pardon me?
John should have access.
And John's not here. John, are you watching? Click the button.
John, click the button.
Yeah. John. Okay, cool. Moving on. So anyways, WordPress phones up. That happens every year. That happens all the time. Yeah. Google Play booted 85 malicious adware apps. Cool. That's like taking a drop of water out of the Atlantic. Awesome. Good for them that they're doing that. There's a lot of malware, though, on the Play Store. That was the joke. So them removing any of it, that's great. That's really good. They should keep doing that. Yeah.
Or are they removing like the high-profile ones instead of just like some random ones?
I mean, the fact that it's adware specific stuff probably means that it's stuff that's like embedded and built into a bunch of other apps as well. I assume it would be high profile because how else is it getting reported? Removed. Oh yeah, that was last year that they removed stuff like adware apps, meaning like flashlights that had a bunch of ads in them, because they can be malicious. They can be spying, sending data. They can just be injecting other malware and stuff like that. Just garbagey ads that are actually malware, that kind of stuff, or garbagey apps that are actually malware. This was neat. This is why you pay your IT people well. El Chapo, the drug cartel person in Mexico, it's a big deal that he's arrested right now. Apparently, it was because like a lot of his metadata around like chats and stuff like that were released or whatever by the IT manager. Amazing. Pay your IT people well. But it makes sense, right? If you're engaged in any sort of IT, you have access to a lot of people's sensitive data. Right? So it's not unheard of for users to use this kind of thing against their employers. That's sketchy. And I mean, generally speaking, it's unethical. This person did it to bring down a great big evil, like drug cartel person. So that, I mean, it's kind of good. But at the same time, we don't want to condone any old IT person flipping on their company and just doing stuff like that. So feds flipped him, apparently. Some gave him money. Neat. Interesting. Moss. So if you have a Microsoft support contract, you're generally using a third party to submit support tickets. And apparently today, if you logged into your support ticket system for Microsoft, you would notice that you could see everybody's support tickets. Like, not just everybody in your company, but like everybody using this third-party Microsoft support service. You saw all their tickets. That's a huge data security risk, because people could be asking all kinds of intense questions about their infrastructure and stuff like that. So that wasn't great. Basically, you got into everybody else's IT ticket system, so not good. Third-party vendors, man. Refresh. There we go. Someone found out, the Trend Micro folks, that you know the great big cranes at construction sites? They figured out how you could remote hack those. Awesome. So you just swing a crane around and like hit stuff. Turns out, luckily, because normally the way this article would go is that I go, why do we plug this stuff into the internet, right? And then we all make fun of them for that. They didn't. It was not internet connected. It just used a really simplistic radio protocol that had no form of authentication or whatever, or the person could spoof sort of the radio handshake that the remote control and the tower used. So you could spoof it or man in the middle of it and then take over the tower that way. Now, you need to be like a not noob at doing radio stuff, but there's a lot of those people out there. So that's interesting. So maybe there's a way to build in some kind of authentication for you know, having the remote control talk to the great big huge swinging metal death bar. So interesting. Yeah, there's probably a lot of work to be done on radio frequency security and authentication, I'm sure, because it's not easy. This was an interesting piece. It's not often that the security researcher Rob Graham writes stuff that's not for his blog. But he's got some friends at Alien Vault, and they convinced him to write a piece for them on sort of a new topic in the security DevOps realm. Currently, the software bill of materials is like a new hot topic. The idea is if I can list all of the libraries, all the pieces of software that are in my gigantic web application development pipeline, having that list will help me manage vulnerabilities for my application. This is the idea. And a lot of people think that that's a good idea. Rob does not. Rob's famous for critiquing the hell out of stuff, but usually pretty successfully. So he goes through this you know, pretty detailed article here explaining why simply having a list of everything inside your app is not some, you know, magic cure-all for security DevOps. He said there's a couple areas where it might help a little bit, but generally speaking, it's probably too much overhead trying to manage this bill of materials than it is spending your security resources doing other types of investigations. So interesting, kind of neat. Worth a read. Worth a read. And any of Rob's stuff is worth a read, unless he gets on his global warming isn't real thing. Not that he doesn't think it's real, he doesn't think it's man-made. This was a neat one from, again, earlier in the month, either that or like right at the end of December, because I don't think we've met for quite a while. Have we? This article didn't happen. No, we talked about this on Discord, right? But not in person. So the EU is offering a whole bunch of bug bounty money to people who report bugs in very popular, heavily used open source projects. There's good things, there's bad things. Chemo, or Katie Musaris, I don't know how to say her last name, is well versed in the bug bounty industry, and her opinion is that, like, it's kind of a little bit of money in the wrong place. She would prefer that maybe half the money was put towards bug bounties, but the other half was put towards then paying somebody to fix the bugs. Because right now, the security researcher who finds the bug gets paid the bug bounty money, and then so then they submit the bug to the open source project. Then the open source developer doesn't get paid, but is expected to fix the issue, right? That's kind of how open source bug bounties go. So maybe some of that money should be put towards hiring people to then do the security patch for the open source tool as well. That's her take on it, and I think that's probably a good take on it. But getting away from like the minutia of it, the idea that the EU has recognized that open source software is important enough to sort of just throw money at the problem to try to make everybody's security a little bit better by offering bounties on popular, often used software packages is kind of good. Right? Like that's a nice thing that their government is trying to do. So that's a positive. It could just use maybe some tweaking. Why did the rest of these like not load? Hey, there's another super critical Drupal vulnerability. So if you use the Drupal content management system, patch it. These happen pretty regularly. Drupal was written in PHP, so like it kind of suffers from the same problem that WordPress does. There were two essentially remote code execution problems. One of them was you could pass it a malicious tar archive that was allegedly a backup, and it will sort of not parse it properly and allow you to get remote code execution by manipulating the tar archive. The other one was by passing like a custom serialized PHP object to it. I forget the specifics of it, but essentially it was you serialize a custom PHP object, they open it up, they improperly manage that object, and again you get remote code execution on the server. So not great. Anytime you get remote code, that's kind of a bad thing. So patch Drupal if you run it. Smart malware. In addition to that funky Android one we talked about, this was a neat tactic developed by a recent crypto mining strain. It's not new that malware uninstalls security protections, but a piece of crypto mining malware targeted a whole slew of cloud-based security software that would be installed in your environment if you're using cloud stuff from Tencent, the popular telco and tech company in China. It targeted like all their stuff. There's a list of it somewhere in the article. Here, the Alibaba Threat Detection Service, Cloud Monitor, Cloud Assistant, Tencent Host Security, Tencent Cloud Monitor. Basically, so the crypto agent would install, it would look for all those things, it would uninstall them, and then it would use all the devices' resources to start mining crypto. So, yeah, we do get like these aggressive kind of retroviruses that target security software. So that's the thing. Towards the end of last year, we talked about the Fancy Bear rootkit, which is sort of the first discovered in the wild UEFI sort of BIOS targeting rootkit. Super scary if things target that level of a system because they get embedded real deep. All the hard drive formatting in the world will not find it because it's embedded itself in like the motherboard, essentially. And this one was discovered in the wild, really advanced, did a lot of bad stuff. And researchers have essentially been able to like unpack it and crack it, so to speak, and figure out what it's doing, how it works. As a result of that, they were able to identify all of its or most of its command and control servers, the IP addresses that it used, the domain name generation schemes it used, and were essentially able to lock down a lot of the rootkit, which was good. This is a great picture, by the way, of a Fancy Bear. Someone left a VoIP database online. It's basically like a great big Elasticsearch database that was being used for managing VoIP stuff for a telco in California. So it was full of texts and call logs, and that was just left on the internet because firewall rules. That's not great. Someone found like a 30-year-old vulnerability in SCP, the secure copy tool that basically is like copy over SSH. The way the exploit, or sorry, I wasn't too clear on the details of the exploit, but essentially the payload is if you copy files from my server using SCP, I can manipulate other files on your computer. That's a pretty bad vulnerability. If you're copying a file from me and I can change any of your files. Not great. That was essentially what it was. And apparently it was like a really old example of whatever the problem was. It's just been buried in there for so long that nobody found it. So interesting. And it impacted more than just the straight SCP tool, like any tool that was built on that. So like PuTTY and WinSCP and stuff like that. So interesting. Yeah, neat, worth a read. I like when people find like 30-year-old vulns that have just sort of somehow not been discovered. It gives me hope that, you know, young bug bounty people will still be able to make money doing bug bounties. Bluehost is a really popular blog or virtual server kind of, but mostly like WordPress hosting platform to host your blogs and stuff on. They also are similar to, what is it, HostGator, DreamHost, a bunch of those things for hosting websites for you. They were found to be just riddled with all kinds of very common web exploits. So like, you know, cross-site scripting or cross-forgery and all kinds of stuff. So not great for all their customers, like lots. The article goes on to describe a lot of stuff that they found that was wrong. So super not good. Hopefully they patch that. It's one of those unfortunate situations though, if you're one of their customers, there's not a lot you can do about it, right? You don't have control over the platform that your content's hosted on, so just gotta wait for them to do that. Last one, CanSec West hosts the Pwn to Own contest this year, and I think this happened last year too, but Tesla has given them a Tesla to let researchers try to Pwn to Own. So basically trying to hack a Tesla. That's pretty cool. That's neat. We should host a contest so that we can get a car or something. Would be nice. Here's the prices this year for Pwn to Own. So for the Tesla, so if you can breach the infotainment system and do like a sandbox escape, 85 grand. That's pretty cool. You know, make money, play around, test it. Key fobs or phone as keys. So I guess if you can figure out how to break the encryption scheme that their key fob uses, that's like 100 grand. Key fobs actually use pretty interesting crypto. It's sort of like a stream type cipher that like updates every time you push the button. Most of you have probably heard this story before, but when I was a younger person and I would go to evening soirees that my friends were hosting, I would grab one of my friend's sets of keys with the key fob, and I would basically, put my hand in my pocket with its keys and walk around all night pushing the button, because eventually the random number generated inside the key fob and the random number maintained by the car get out of sync. So if you push the key fob, like lock or unlock button, about 200 times, they become out of sync and the key fob no longer works on the car. So your friend discovers that the next morning when he's got a hangover and goes to his car and tries to unlock it and won't unlock with the key fob button. Then he's got to go to his, what do you call it, where you take your car? Dealership, and they have to resync them, and then your friend hates you, and you don't have friends anymore. It's great, and then you become a teacher and everything's wonderful. Yeah, so that's what happens. But it works. You can try it. Sometimes you really got to push that button like 200 times, and you can't be within range of the vehicle. It can't pick up the fact that you pushed it. Otherwise, it'll resync, and you're out of luck again. I'm not suggesting you do that, but I'm just saying it's a thing that can be done. Like line your pocket with tinfoil and do that. Right? Don't put your keys down at a party. Just don't do that. It wasn't one of those kind of parties either. Inappropriate. Okay, that's it for the news. I'm going to go ahead and turn off all the streaming because I guess I should do that now.